Hi, this is Damien from AtHope, and I am an Axiological Atheist. And I wanted to address today was atheism. So I talk a lot about a lot of other things, but I am an atheist, and I want to try to address this as best I can to the clearest and most in-depth way, because I feel like there's a lot of people have a confusion. So there's first off, there's at least two different kinds of groupings of atheism styles. So one is called weak atheism. The other one is called strong atheism. So you have to understand that weak atheism is basically just the weakest position you can hold in that. In other words, a baby, in a sense, by not having a theist belief, is kind of like a default atheist. So that's part of weak atheism. And when someone generally says they're an agnostic, to me, the agnostic is not something that can be by itself, to me. Because either you accept the God proposition or you don't. And if you don't have active belief in the God proposition, you're an atheist. I mean, you may not like the word, you may never use the word, you may not understand the word, but if you do not have a theistic belief, that position that you are holding is atheism. It is the or the lack, in a sense, of the theistic belief. So it just means basically not theism. So not the belief. So now, strong atheism is more about addressing one's position about the belief. So it's not just lacking the belief. Like some people will say, all it takes to be an atheist is a lack of belief. Well, that's true. That is all it takes. But that's not all atheism is. Or that's not the only way one has to approach atheism. So the atheist question in general, the furthest that all connect on or have to connect on, is you cannot be an atheist and have a theistic belief. That's just a fact. So at its most base thing, I've heard people before try to say that they're a non-theist. Well, a non-theist is an atheist. You don't get to have other types of philosophic things. You cannot accept that, but it's still a fact. It's still a fact established, in the semantics of philosophy. And it's just a fact that if you lack theism, you're an atheist. So, but that doesn't mean that that's the limitation. And that's what I really want to talk about too. Because I'm an axiological atheist. So that tells you how I'm approaching the concept of atheism, how I'm going to defend it, why I feel that this way of doing it is, for me personally, the most connecting. So I want to address the thing. To me, in general, I feel that atheism, as opposed to religion, raises humanity. Because, in a sense, all religion basically postures that there's this being. So all theism, let's just say theism. So all kinds of theism, whether or not it's connected to religion, generally is that there's some being that can remove my human rights at will. Well, to me as an axiological atheist, coming from a value thinking standpoint of how I approach things, I would see that that's removing my value of human rights. Because if you can tell me or control me what I'm doing to the ultimate extent that I don't even have my right to say live the life the way I want without, being attacked or being put in hell, then I really can't live my life. It's a form of bondage. It's not, to me, a form of freedom. To me, atheism not only is true in the fact that there's no magic in the world and no reason to assume super magic created the world, then to me, it's just a simple fact that pragmatically, you would look at nature if you were never told magic, and you would look at nature and you would just see nature. If you, in a sense, as a scientific way, you didn't add anything, and philosophy should do this too, in a sense, thinking should be done with reason always guiding you. It's not like you just throw, puzzle pieces, on the ground and you from 10 puzzles, and then you only expect to use the cover of one box, the picture that you're going to follow, that would be extremely hard. There's no reason to work that hard. To me, it's to understand that how we navigate that, though, is reason. And to me, that's what we do when we approach it to the God concept from an axiological. It's reason with the value thinking. So value thinking in the sense that I'm making value judgments. And I'm analyzing if there was such a thing, and it could do this property, how would that affect humanity? How would that affect my life? So if God was real, it would be a toxic thing. Even though God is not real, it is still a toxic thing to me as an axiological atheist, because it is the belief that you are not to believe in yourself. It is the belief that you are not to believe in others, really. It's the belief that you are supposed to believe in something that's not here, not seen. And so what I mean by believe in others and believe in yourself, I'm talking about that the belief that humanity alone, by itself, can raise itself up. To me, if you're a theist, you think that God is necessary. You think God is a requirement. You think things can't be done without God. At least that's how I was certainly taught. Was all things are by the glory of God. And so to me, when you add that God concept, what you're really saying is the lack of glory of you. It's the disvalue of your glory. It's the disvalue of the glory of humanity. So everything you do that you win, it's always a gift of the God. So to me, that's how I approach the thing. But just think about it like this. If we broke down the word atheist and just made it a fun acronym, to me, it would be against theological heresy, endangering intellectual sensibility. So to me, when I refer to theological heresy, I am saying theological ideas like God and magic are a heresy to the naturalistic reality that we can see with our own eyes. That science has, in every test, has shown that there's nothing magic. It's just all a bunch of natural, reducible things. So to me, we have to understand that if we look at the evidence of archaeology, the history is not like say the claims of the Bible, that it's only somehow 6,000 years old. Ridiculous. We can see it in the science. We can see it if we really apply philosophic rigor to our things. Like I think the conclusion of atheism demonstrates often is that a person has put rigor to ideas. Like I believe as an atheist, we should have an etiquette of belief, an etiquette of processing ideas. And mine is that we should have good belief, in the sense, what we let in, acquisition. So when we have stuff come in, we want to make sure that it's quality. And we want to make sure that the ideas are useful and beneficial and that they are going to be in that way. Because, in other words, we have a lot of things we could think. There's a lot of words we could use to do stuff. We could sit all day long and try to think of hateful, mean, terrible things. Or we could think with reason. We could think with kindness. It really matters in how we think. And thinking does, relate to our actions. So to me, if we constantly only think of the negative, then we're going to do it. And I think that people have it wrong. Because here's theists. And they make this joke that somehow atheist is negative. How possibly is it negative to have an honesty that when I look out, I only see nature? How is that not the most honest thing? It is a fucking lie to say that there's fairies and shit hiding inside the tree. It is ridiculous to say that there's Santa Claus sitting up on top of it. Or Jolly Green Giant is grooming the bottom roots of the tree. I mean, it's just a bunch of nonsense. That's not honest things unless you can give a valid and reliable justification for why you claim to know that. With some sort of evidence and reality, then you have at the least a non-reality belief. And to me, all theism is non-reality beliefs. So, to me, the question should be, do we start at knowing theism? Do we start at knowing atheism? Well, atheism doesn't have to know anything. It's the lack of, it's the not theism. It's the not adding this magical substance that is non-reality. So, we do not start knowing at somehow theism. Although I will say, until 7 years old, children generally are animistic thinkers. And what I mean by that is that children give magical agency to things. When they don't understand, when things seem amazing, then they just think, oh, it must be magic. Or they have the tendency to think this way. So, also, this brings up the issue of disbelief. So, I hear some atheists will say, they don't have beliefs. Sorry, that itself is a belief. You believe, you do not have beliefs. So I really think it's ridiculous. Don't focus on the belief itself, because all you're saying is you have an acceptance of something. You do that all the time. This is trivial. The issue of why we address theistic beliefs is because they're non-reality beliefs. So this has to be. So when you offer me a non-reality belief and I assess that belief and I reject it, I have now disbelief. I do not believe you. And so to me, disbelief comes after this realization of not knowing or not thinking. But we're addressing that what is being offered. You not only can't believe it, you realize it's error, and so you cannot believe it. I cannot believe theism. I cannot believe the propositions that there's magic in the world when there clearly is not. Show me some science that proves it, then we can start talking. And certainly not until then should you even think about anything else. To me, I will try to offer some simplistic definitions of different positions of atheism one could choose. Of course, these are going to be overgeneralizations because everyone's going to approach things a little different. The most wonderful thing about atheism is there's no have to. You don't have to do shit as an atheist other than just not believe in theism. Now, how else you approach that, how else you support that, why you feel the need to hold that position, those can be different. But the final element, the last thing of the conclusion that you don't agree with theism, that's where we're all the same. So we're all atheists. Or we're a theistic believer to some extent. So I will first address non-belief because to me, non-belief is what happens first. So the weakest implicit non-theism or atheism also can be considered negative or soft, is a non-belief that is similar to just the most basic non-theism. So we don't know anything else about it. We just know it's that. So the next one, and there's 10 that I'm going to list. These are ones I arranged and came up with. So is strong implicit atheism or negative, weak, soft non-belief, similar to apatheistic atheism. Apatheistic is you don't really believe it, but you don't really know. You also don't really care. You look out at the world, there's nothing, and you just keep living your life. So then there's weak, explicit atheism, which could be negative, weak, soft atheists, similar to agnostic atheism, or people that call themselves agnostics. And there's strong, explicit atheism, and this also can be considered to be somewhat negative or weak or soft, and its nature, atheist, similar to Ignostic Atheism, with an I instead of an A. And it basically is looking at the God proposition offered and saying that it's non-cognitive. The words don't make any sense. When you say soul or spirit, or you say God, when you say God is a supernatural, what is that? How do you quantify that? It has no meaning. It has no. We cannot point to it. We cannot test it. It is. You're offering just a empty mental abstraction. That's what the non-theist, in a sense, agnostic atheism. So then there's the 5 in my list, which is the strongest, which is what I am, the strongest explicit atheism. Positive, strong, hard atheist. Similar to some people, probably to anti-theist, because when someone's generally a strong atheist, they feel so strong about not just generally that the God concept is not true, and they're at the highest epistemic certainty of that, but also that because they are seeing that what it is, to me also, is that you're looking at this concept and you're critically analyzing it. This thing that's being offered to me is an anti-humanist thing. The God is always trying to tell us what to do, who to like, who not to like, how we should do things. It's a complete and utter master of your life. Now, most theists, as you know, probably even if they were told that, don't really have a problem, because a lot of times in their religion they teach us a good thing to be a servant of God. So, and teach servant of others. Now, I do believe that it's not wrong to be a servant leader. In other words, I try to do that. I try to be someone who is a leader, but I want to be a servant. I want to try to do stuff for other people. I want to be of help. And so I'm not trying to push myself up. I'm trying to bring everybody, up at the same time. And so let's get to the belief part, because I already talked about the atheism. So unlike some, scales that may start with somehow theism and ending at atheism, no, mine starts at atheism and you end up at theism, because if you choose to believe. So to me, 6, the weakest implicit theistic thinking, negative, soft, weak belief, similar to somethingism, or it's called let-theism or vague theism. Somethingism is like everyone's probably heard this. So we go, do you believe in God? And they go, well, I don't know, but there's something. I just feel it. Well, that's somethingism. That's a person that doesn't really, in a sense, have any clear concept of what theism is, and they're not promoting, in the sense, a general deity, but they just feel there has to be some energy, some connected being somewhere doing something. I mean, it's somethingism. Then to me, it's weak implicit theism. And this is a negative, weak, soft belief, similar to apatheistic theists. They think there's a God, but they don't really care. They don't really spend any effort, to do anything. So then there's, to me, that's 8. And then 9 is strong implicit theism, positive, strong, hard theist, similar to what would probably be called a standard type of theism that people use. Because you'll hear them, because they'll say, well, I believe in God. I mean, they have total confidence. If you ask them, like, confidence level, it would be real super high. That doesn't mean it's true. Confidence has fucking all to do with an accuracy of the world. We can be confident about something that's totally false. So, then the last one, 10, strongest implicit theism, positive, strong, hard theist, similar to Agnostic Atheism, or a total form of they believe they know theism. So I want to address this. I'm going to go through and read you different. I'm going to attach a blog also. But I have a couple different kinds of atheism. I'm going to go ahead and read you the ones that I have. There's a few more than this. And also to understand, when I say it's a kind of atheism, it's not saying that you couldn't, they say, be 8 kinds in a sense, because anything that relates to you, that would be you. I just am reading different kinds, also because sometimes people will not know how to defend against theism, or they won't know what their position that they feel like. They'll say theism is wrong, but they'll feel it a different way than, say, someone else. So someone could say they think so because of logic. Someone could say because of science. Someone could just say practical. They look around, they don't see nothing. So there's different ones. Anyways, Atheist. And an atheist is basically against deism. And this is probably a lot of people. In other words, like there's some people that are atheists, but they could say they're agnostic because they don't know if a deism exists. Well, an atheist would be a person who does not agree that deism exists, does not comes from that standpoint. Then there's agnostic atheism, which these people believe that they're addressing the knowledge claims separate from beliefs. I don't believe that beliefs and knowledge are separate. I think their belief is just an acceptance, and knowledge is when you understand that acceptance has a justification and has a validity to it in some sense. Anyways, analytic atheism, and this comes to belief from analytic thinking about the concept. Most people that are analytic thinkers in general, once that's really thought and applied to the God concept, generally become atheists. Most people that are analytical generally have some form of non-belief. So there's also anarchy atheism. Some people could come because they feel that the religions are an anti-freedom and the God is a master. So there's also some people who are antagonist atheists. Some people don't believe God exists, and they go out of their way to antagonize and mock people that are religious. Now, depending on how harsh these people can be, they're almost like hate theism, where they're basically hate theists more than just atheists. They go around, and I hate the concept of God that's offered as real. If it was offered as like Lord of the Rings, I wouldn't care. If you said you wanted to believe it and you didn't go out and hurt people, I wouldn't care. The belief would be false. I would tell you it's false as far as it relates to reality. But it's really, to me, the fact that it's false, and I want to help people. So I want to help. I don't hate theists. I hate theism. I hate this bullshit offered as truth. I hate that it makes people feel ashamed for being gay, and it sees women as generally less than. I hate a lot of the stuff that it does to children. I hate that it's not a path to truth. It's like a way to stop thinking. I mean, I was a theist for 35 years. I'm a pretty good thinker now. What the hell? How did I not manage to not become? Why did it take me so damn long? Well, to me, it's because I had too much, faith-drunk thinking. I basically just, what I was offered, this nonsense, toxic stuff of theism, that you should just believe on faith. As if faith is even a good method to believe anything. It's not. It's just like saying I have confidence. Confidence doesn't produce evidence. Generally, evidence should produce confidence or lack of confidence. And if I don't have evidence, I should have no confidence, or certainly a lack of confidence. So I'm going to keep going. So there's also anti-clerical atheism, a type of atheism that basically opposes clergy and stuff like that, any sort of almost organized religion as it relates to stuff like that. It's not as harsh towards philosophy type of religion, but it's more against religion that has monasteries or churches and popes and priests and monks and whatever. Because it sees those as being oppressive things. And then there's anti-religionist atheism, which I'm proud to say I'm a member of. Because I am an anti-religionist. I see religion as basically, as offered, unless it's going to be turned into myths, as offered, it is a toxic substance to humanity. And I wish it to be done. And to me, I'll just give you three, like, really quick reasons I can't stand it. Religion has three things it does generally. It offers, listen to this, it offers pseudoscience. As much as people want to believe in religion and their bullshit-ass claims, if they're not proven, and they're not, then they're pseudoscience. They're offering magical claims as if they're real. So there's pseudoscience. Right there, that is a problem, because especially when people live their lives off of this supposed science, like the belief in prayer also, things like that. These are toxic things that are offered. The belief that you can just ask and magic happens. I'm sorry, it does not. There's no such thing as magic. Prayers don't work. In fact, what I really hate is when prayers are used for children, when they get injured and stuff, instead of getting actual medical care. That happened to me. I had medical neglect because I had, a father that believed in, healing and prayer, and that's just not acceptable. So to me, that anti-science, which it often is, not just a lack of it, but they disdain aspects of science. Well, really, they disdain anything that can prove them wrong. So since science can offer things that makes their religion sound wonky as shit, they're definitely prone to want to do that, to remove the science. And religion has already capitalized on this offering pseudoscience and rejecting actual science. So that's one of the things I don't like. The other thing I don't like is that it has, pseudo history. It has this bullshit stuff that didn't happen. And I love when people try to say, oh, well, there's some things in the Bible. Oh my gosh, there's a few things that match, since half the stuff it talks about is not even magical. It's just a bunch of nonsense about people living in at a certain time, going to wars and doing stuff. Now, when we find out some of those wars, some of the things they say, they don't match up. They don't even begin to match up. They completely are out of sync. And to me, right there, that pseudo history you're being offered. See, because if you remove the pseudo history, then you wouldn't be able to have most of what supposedly gives a religion any kind of quality and reality. Because they try to say, like, that these things happen, thus, see, the religion is true. Or like, it's great if you can, write stuff that, makes you sound so wonderful and courageous. It's all bullshit. So, to me, that pseudo history, and do religions even like, there's not like one kind of Buddhism, right? So there's a couple kinds of Buddhism, and they don't have one origin story. They have a couple of different origin stories, a couple different times, two main times of when supposed Buddha got born. But one of them is obviously not true, even if there's only two. Since there are, I can't remember now off the top of my head, but I think it's like 150 years or something different, or I can't remember, but it's something like that. Whatever, it's a big difference. It's not a little difference. It's not like born on Tuesday, born on Wednesday. No, I'm talking like born on Tuesday and then 150 years later, born on a Wednesday. One of those is not true. One of those is being offered as true, but is not. So it is pseudo history. And to me, and how about this? What if they both are pseudo history? And what if there wasn't a Buddha? But or what if both those are wrong, even if there was a Buddha? Both those could still be wrong. Both be pseudo history. Some other thing actually happened. But anyways, religion offers this. Religion offers this pseudo history, and they do it to make it sound more legitimate. And this is something that I really hate. The other thing I really hate about religions, is that the fact that they have pseudo morality, that they say things are moral that are not moral. They'll say how to properly, do stuff with your slave. Slavery is immoral. All that shit you said was immoral. When you talk about like half the things in the Bible, there's a long list of things you can be killed for, right? Come on. The death penalty for like the most outlandish stuff, didn't observe the Sabbath. Murder, found your attraction to someone and murder. I mean, it's like everything has a death penalty. Or not everything, but lots of things, and certainly unrealistic to any kind of way you could try to make it moral. That's like looking at like the ideas of hell. The idea that this never-ending torture. No one would look on the earth at someone who does torture to people and go, that's a great person right there. No. It's offered pseudo-morality if you believe so. Just like it says, things in the Bible like, if your daughter is raped, have her marry the rapist. Yeah, that's not moral. That's just horseshit. All right, so I'm going to move on again. So, and there's anti-theistic atheism. Now, some people think that anti-theism is anti-religionism, and I would agree that in a lot of concepts, because theism is so, in a sense, impregnated in other forms of religion, that most, in a sense, a lot of religions have a god or something like a god. And so if you're an anti-theist and you're against the God concept, against theism, then that really covers almost every religion. But not every religious idea, because there's a lot of religious ideas that do not have God concepts. So another one is basically someone who's an epistemist. Atheist, and someone who doesn't agree with the use of faith. I definitely don't. I would say I'm an anti-theist, and fideism is basically faithism. So I'm against the concept of using that faith as any kind of anything. To me, it's just like saying I have hope. You know, it means it doesn't have any evidentiary use other than just knowing that someone has hope. But the level of it wouldn't make much of a difference other than just knowing that they feel that way. So I am an axiological atheist. Yay for me. No. So it's a value theory or a value science atheist. So think of it this way. It's a constructive approach or use to value, and it's value centered on kind of a ethics-driven atheism and humanism, really. And it rejects the existence of gods. In a sense, what normal people would put towards, God as their higher values. Well, as an axiological atheist, I would see that, in a sense, I favor, humanity and society and my own mind for the higher absolute of what would be the best morality. So I'm going to keep going. So there's also, well, this is what I think most theists, when they think of someone who's an atheist, and they say, are you angry atheist? You're just angry at God. Okay, what they're really referring to is probably emotional atheism. Now, this is the funny thing. The theists do not get, let's just say I'm an atheist and I have emotional atheism. I'm going to tell you what that is in a second. But so let's just say I have this thing they think I have, right? So that I have emotional atheism. But emotional atheism, they don't get, doesn't mean that's what I'm going to stay. If I am an atheist and I go into the atheist community, I'm going to meet other atheists. And the majority atheists are not emotional atheists. So the majority atheists, not being emotional atheists, are going to talk in interverse and teach them stuff that are not emotional, and thus not this reason. Very few people that they say even come to the atheism as an emotional atheist are going to stay that way because they're going to learn more. So I'm going to go explain what I mean by emotional atheism. There are kinds of unbelievers who, due to some unfortunate personal tragedy or just very negative feelings and desires to go against, say, their peers, their society, their culture, their family, their religion, their whatever, and then they emotionally choose to become an atheist, to not believe. And they see God appeals to nothing to them, but for emotion. Often they come to this kind of a doubt that's, I would say it's a doubting of the benevolence of the God concept or God itself. It's a feeling, and I'm not saying God's real. I'm saying they're thinking. They're starting to look at the God concept that they believed and how it's presented in their family, and they don't feel this connection. So this is, like I said, this is not the standard. This is what theists think every atheist is. But how people, could say that they're angry at God if they don't believe in a God, they're still missing the point. If one is an atheist, whether it's emotional or not, you can't believe in a God. and be an atheist. So even if you're, let's say, angry, emotionally, at why you came to atheism, so I mean, it doesn't mean that somehow you can still violate thinking. You can't say I'm an atheist and I'm angry at God. It's ridiculous. You would be either not really an atheist, or you're an atheist, and that statement doesn't make sense. See, because to me, even to someone like this, if it's atheism, gods, in a sense, are presented no different than unicorns, or some other sort of magical claim of fairies or something, or dragons. So it's still that the proposition offered is not worth believing in. So even if one is, in a sense, a genuine emotional atheist, it's still a doubt of the God concept. Although hate is infusing this desire to in other words, see the doubt or see the error. Like, let's just say that you present something and you said that this thing hurt a kid, and if you can prove it wrong, in a sense, the kid will be saved. Well, it gives you motivation. So in other words, when I say emotional atheism, I'm talking about to address the anger atheism that the theists think. Even if someone has anger, if they're really an atheist, the anger may be not in a sense the way a theist would think. A theist are thinking you're angry at God, and I'm angry because there's a thing called God that you're forcing down my throat, or something like that. But generally, even if you had that opinion, the more you study, the more you learn, you start to find other reasons. But here's the point to understand. It doesn't actually need to, though. All we need to do to be an atheist is simply reject your theistic claims. That's it. Now, we can, like I said, we can be more. So a lot of people are, in a sense, an empiricist atheist, that they use science and they use the natural world. Or in a sense, you could think of it as they're applying that type of epistemological theory to the way they argue or think about, addressing the God concept. Or it could be all knowledge in general. So another kind is speaking of epistemology, is epistemological atheism. That basically you're dealing with the what, why, how is this true? How do you know this? And because there's not valid and reliable answers to give an affirmative for the God concept, you either would have to be a non-theist of some kind, because you're basically if you can't, like, if I say they have a belief, right? To me, that there's basically like three positions in general. So the one position is that I don't have any belief at all. And let's just say that is that kind of a disbelief. And then you have basically that in the middle before that is that I don't know, because before you stop believing or you understand something is wrong, you disbelieve it, you don't know. It's not a position in a sense. It's just like a tabling that, for investigation. So I think that some people try to say that that's agnosticism, that somehow, but no, agnosticism is making a claim that it doesn't know. That's not the same thing as saying I'm still looking, and I have yet to make a decision. So once you've made a decision that there's not enough to support the justification for theism, whether or not you want to use the word agnosticism, you are now an atheist. So what I also do as an axiological atheist, but other people are this in a sense, is ethical atheism. And it's heavily involved with using the standards, in a sense. People go say, well, how does ethics is a secondary thing to atheism? No, there's a thing called ethics of belief, which is a standard of how you approach beliefs. So if you're an ethical atheist, this would be a big priority for you to have an ethics of belief, and how you would let anything, how you would even accept belief. Now, a lot of people, in a sense, have this in science. Like they would consider they have to get, do it in certain ways, or it's invalid, or it's some sort of a misinformation. So that the fact that you're required or expected to do that is an ethics of way you're supposed to believe or approach things. So to me, then there's evidentialist atheism, and this thinks that whatever or not belief in a divine being is epistemically acceptable will determine it only by the evidence. So, in other words, if there isn't evidence for a God, this type of atheism, evidential atheism, in a sense, you would just not accept it because of that fact. There isn't stuff to give reason. So there's also, I'm going to read them a little faster now. Existentialism atheism, and there's experiential atheism, and then there's feminist atheism, and there's humanist atheism, and there's agnostic atheism. There's investigative atheism. Investigative atheism may take some interest in showing how skeptical theistic ways of thinking can be brought down, and also brought to a larger flow to the total evidence of what they should be skeptical about, and can be used to expose certain sources of doubt about theism, and they're showing that it's sufficient to prevent this, in a sense, a hasty migration into theism, because there isn't, in a sense, the richness, and it sees that there's too many sources of doubt. In other words, if I can give you 1,000 reasons why something is wrong, and someone can only give you, in a sense, one reason why they think it could be good, then the sources of doubt have investigated. You're desiring to, in a sense, put like arguments for and against, and then it's like investigating them, and almost like in a way that you would almost make a study for a science or something. You're approaching them, you're looking at it, quantifying them, and so it's not that some atheists that are, in a sense, not doing this intentionally might just be doing this out of the fact of wanting to have stuff answered for themselves. I consider that to be valid, that all by itself, that just the desire to investigate. But that investigative atheism, to me, is almost like putting research standards to how you approach it, the levels and the different sources of doubt. So then there's logical atheism. Logical atheism holds that various concepts of God, such as personal God, are ascribed logically inconsistent qualities. There's a bunch more, but I could read it, but I'm not going to. There's materialistic atheism. There's metaphysical atheism. There's naturalist atheism. There's nihilist atheism. There's non-cognitive atheism. There's non-evidential atheism. There's objectivism atheism. There's ontological atheism. There is pan-atheism. There is philosophical atheism. There is political or state atheism. Now, political or state atheism is the official promotion of atheism as government. In other words, instead of a separation of atheism and state, it would be those things together. The same as someone would say separation of church and state. So it wants to have a more than just secular. It generally is pushing atheism more at the state level, which I want secularism. I don't demand that atheism is state level. I think that it would be great if they could have atheists up there. Anyways, there's practical atheism. There's psychological atheism. There's rationalist atheism. And there's reared and familial atheism. This is kind of an atheism where people say, oh, I was raised and we didn't really talk about it, but they don't really know anything. They almost accept it as a default, like some people that are religious sometimes do, where they say, well, my family is, so I am. I mean, so there are people like this. This is probably even rare. But we need to understand, though, that people that are like this, they generally they have a higher percentage to actually become theists, because this is the reason. This is because they're not really atheists. In other words, they're more like they haven't really thought about it. They just say they don't, but there's no substance, in a sense, that they don't think about it, because it was never, in a sense, brought up as a big issue to think about. They didn't really address it. And studies show that there's a 30% chance, that they will, ones that are raised atheists, will go right back into, or I think it's some percentage like that. It's extremely high than I would think. And they basically become some form of religion, generally unaffiliated Christian or something, is a lot of times common. Anyways, and there's also religious atheism. Now, this will be obviously the one I can't fucking stand. Religious atheism means different things to different kinds of people in different kinds of ways, but it's like wanting to keep the religion or adding religion to one's atheism. And they will sometimes, of course, not have all the magical beliefs. Sometimes. I mean, obviously, to call themselves an atheist, whether it's a religious atheist or not, they have to not believe in the God concept. But they still may think that, oh, well, but the stories are good, and the morals are good, and the community is good, and blah, 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 whatever bullshit. So that, in a sense, they're religious atheists. And then there's scientific atheists coming at it from that. There's also seeker atheism, that you embrace the fact that you may not have all the answers. You may not be sure if others do either, or what answers you could even know to clarify. Your part in the seeker atheism category, which tends to be among the sort of less critical of religion, so they're usually more accommodationalists, and they come across, as trying to be just understanding. They're a lot less threatening than probably someone like me would be, even though I certainly seek for the truth also. There's skeptical atheism, and there's also spiritual atheism, even though I don't agree with that term. Then, basically, we'll wrap it up. To me, I think that the first thing that we need to do when we're offered the God concept, whether or not you've ever thought about this, is what is a God? I mean, what is the thingness of this thing that they're claiming? What reality properties do they have to justify, support the warrant for this claim? And if they can't, why should I be compelled to believe? If you're a believer and you think that God is real, just think of that yourself. What is the whatness of God that you're talking about? What is it? Now they'll say, I've heard people go, "Oh, God is the creator of the universe." Okay, that is a claim about a behavior. Someone did something, like if you made a car. That's not who the person is. So then they'll say, oh, well, it's a supernatural being. Well, first off, I don't know what that word means. So what's a supernatural? Let's say it's not natural, or it's more than natural. Well, all I know is natural. It's all science has ever found. So what do you mean by supernatural? So to me, it's getting them to clarify, ask exploratory questions. And to me, they have to fight. The thing is that we want to give answers. Why? I don't know really the answer. Unless you really do believe you know what a God is. You should be the one, if you're an atheist, you should be the one questioning. What are you talking about? What do you mean by that? I remember one guy told me that, he found heaven or whatever through mushrooms. You have to ask, what do you mean by heaven? See, a lot of times, even sometimes when people, I asked one person what they meant by God, and They say, well, I mean, good feelings. Okay, well, then you don't mean a magical being, right? Well, no. Well, then you're using that term wrong. Or at least you need to clarify when you use it, because everybody else is assuming you're talking about this magical thing. Jesus, God, Yahweh, whatever. Zeus, whatever. Muhammad, not Muhammad, Allah, Vishnu, whatever. So the fact is that we should be the champions of reality, standing up for truth. And to me, it's just too simple to look at the theistic claims and understand they don't make sense in logic. They don't make sense to the reality of the world. And there's no evidence, in a sense, found that can really establish their claims. They lack warrant. They lack justification. They're not even a good hypothesis. Good hypothesis would have some reasoned thing it's starting from in reality. They don't. So stay godless. And I'm